guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I am doing Comic Uno episode 174. And this is a show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go worst pick of the week to best pick of the week and everything in between. This week I had 20 books, so it's a pretty average week for me. So let's get started. What was number 20 for me this week? And that is Supergirl issue 4. Still picking up Supergirl because I love the character, but just don't really like the direction of the current book. Still focusing on the Cyborg Superman stuff, and I do think Kara's a bit better of a character here, but it doesn't really progress the story that much. I mean, they try to progress the character, but there was no moving moment for me. I still didn't feel really attached to Eliza or Kara's relationship, which they tried doing here, of like, oh, you know, I care for Eliza, I care for humans. And I think that's a good movement for this series, but still not making me feel invested or really making me feel like this is a Supergirl book yet. So, Supergirl issue 4 gets number 20, and that is worst pick of the week, sadly. But moving on to number 19, which is another Superman-related book, and that is Action Comics issue 969. And with this issue, it definitely slows things down, focusing on, I want to say the God Killers is their names, and the God Slayers, the Slayer of Gods. And they focus on one of these God Slayers and his family. And they take so much time doing it, and I still didn't care about him or these God Slayer characters. And I understand it has to do with Darkseid and all that, which is cool, but I've never really been interested in that side of the DC universe, so I just didn't really care for the story, and it leads into Superman saying, I have to save Lex, and I'm like, alright, that's cool. It's an interesting cliffhanger that we've kind of seen before, but yeah, I wasn't really focusing on Superman. I was very much focusing on these villains, but still didn't make the villains interesting to me. So Action Comics issue 969 is number 19, and that gets 2.5 stars. Moving on to number 18, sad to see this so low, but it's just kind of a slower issue, and that was Red Hood and the Outlaws issue 5. I've actually really been liking this series, but this doesn't really move the plot that much. It's very much an action issue of Artemis and, Artemis and Red Hood going against Bizarro, and how Black Mask is connected to Bizarro. And that's pretty much the story, and they fight. And Artemis and Red Hood are trying to get into, I guess, Bizarro's brain and trying to get him out of this trance. And it was okay, you know, like I said, it was just a very action issue. I wanted a little bit more story from them. So, Red Hood and the Outlaws issue 5 gets 2.5 stars, and that is number 18. Moving on to number 17, which is a book that wasn't bad because I liked some of the story, but it just felt really repetitive. Like they were re-explaining an issue. And that was Spider-Man issue 10, where Miles is just re-explaining Civil War II in this book. So it felt so fillerish, but it's not horrible because A, the art's good, and B, because you do get some emotions from Miles. But is it worth $3.99? I think you could have stuck some of that emotion into another issue and not reestablish everything we know about Civil War II, and then spoil Civil War II even more than it's already been spoiled. So, yeah, I felt that this was a little bit too repetitive for me, so I'm going to give Spider-Man issue 10 2.5 stars. It's not worth picking up for me, but there is an interesting ending that hopefully will lead into Spider-Man becoming a better series for me, because I love Miles, but his series hasn't been on par, honestly, since this new relaunch. And him in the Marvel Universe, instead of his own universe. Now moving on to number 16, a book that I would say it wasn't really for me, but I definitely respect, and that was Rockstars issue 1. The thing I respect is obviously just the rock and roll history and the mysteries. I'm a huge Beatles fan, so I love the Paul is Dead reference, and you know, they try to mix originality of some, you know, made-up rock star story into things that are legend of rock, you know? So I like that. I will say that the reason I didn't like the series, though, was the characters. I wasn't very interested in the main leads or their mystery, but I respect the tone of the book and the feel of the book and how they bring music to a static medium. So I gave it 3 stars. Probably won't get issue 2, but like I said, respected the issue. So moving on to number 15, another slower book this week, and that was Reborn issue 3. I love Millar's work, but a lot of times with these books, they end up slowing down in the middle or the end. It's always a really great concept, but I think sometimes there's too many issues in the mini, and I like a little bit more progression. But here, we get to see Bonnie and her father teaming up, and Bonnie getting her warrior powers, and that's pretty much it. They get stuck in a jail. So it's a very slow issue. Not a lot happens, but it was still a cool issue seeing Bonnie and her father bond and learning a little bit more about this universe. And Capullo's artwork is awesome. So Reborn issue 3 gets 3 stars. Moving on to number 14. Sad to see this low. Some people might think this would be higher for me because of a character that was showcased, but Detective Comics issue 946. So I have a love and I don't want to say love-hate because I don't hate this book, but love and unsatisfied relationship with Detective Comics. I love the book because of the concept. I love this team and a lot of the characters in it. But a lot of the times, it jumps, and this issue kind of is an example of that. It's really wordy for wordy's sake, and it doesn't really progress the story that much. I just feel like it could be cleaner, the dialogue for this book. And then the story structure, we jump so much of, Clayface defeating his villain, Batman defeating his, and Batwoman going against hers, that you don't get a lot of story because of it. And then you have Stephanie, who is one of my favorite characters of all time. Who I feel is kind of out of character here. And again, it's not extremely out of character. It just doesn't really feel like Stephanie would do these things. So, she's dealing with grief. She's dealing with the death of Tim. But we never really got to see the bond between Tim and Stephanie in this universe. And not saying that her grief is, out there because, she's grieving over someone she loves. But I guess because she's highlighting so much on a relationship with Tim that we didn't really see because it was off panel a lot of their relationship, at least in the New 52. And then one thing I've always loved about Stephanie is her optimism. When she's always faced something horrible in her life, she's known why she wanted to be a hero. And with this book, they do the opposite. She's very unoptimistic, and she doesn't know why she's a hero, which is an interesting concept because, in this universe, she was thrown into being spoiler, and she never really questioned it. She doesn't really have her mom. She doesn't really have, she has supporting characters, but it's kind of a different dynamic for this book than it was for the pre-New 52, which was very much about Stephanie. You saw her bond with her mother, and it was a slower burn of seeing her relationship with Cassandra and with Tim. So you kind of understood those relationships a bit more. But here, they're very squeezed in because it's the New 52, so you don't have a lot of time to explain all these relationships that had so many years of development. But yeah, I guess I was just a little confused by her motives. Even though I guess I understand it from a New 52 point of view of why she would feel this way, I just, that's what I loved about Stephanie, is that she's always been that optimistic person. No matter what, she'll be a hero. And she always wanted to be. So, it's a little weird to kind of have this side of Steph, but I'm hoping it will bring out a side we know from her. And I like the cliffhanger of her saying, she's kind of like fighting her team, and obviously I think it's a cliffhanger that's will be resolved in the next issue why she's doing the things she's doing. But I gave Detective Comics issue 946 3 stars. Still don't know how to completely feel about this series, but still love getting these characters and hopefully seeing the bigger picture once we get more of the story. So now moving on to number 13, which is Superwoman, issue 5. A book that's lower than I want it to be because I love the concept of this book. And even the monologue. I love Lana as Superwoman. I love what she has to say. But the plot itself right now going on, I don't really like. I feel like it's kind of fillerish and especially after reading the solicits of March and the new Superman story coming out. I feel like it's fillerish to get up to that point that's gonna, I guess, progress Superwoman's story finally. And I just don't really like, I don't like Lex's sister in this story, because we have her in Supergirl TV show, and she's so good because you don't know if she's evil or not. And here it's like the twisting mustache, I'm evil because there's not a lot of motives, and a lot of times there's a lot of stuff going on in the issue where you can't concentrate on the one thing that you're trying to concentrate on. But things I liked is getting to learn more about Steele's niece. I thought that was a really cool story. And the ending with a bizarro Superwoman that might be Lois. So I like the ending. So there's definitely good stuff here, but I think it could be a little bit more organized, the story arc itself. So Superwoman issue 5 gets 3 stars. So now I'm moving on to number 12, which is actually a lot higher than I expected this book to be, but number 12 is DC Rebirth Holiday Special Issue 1. And usually with these books, they end up a little lower because they're all these short stories. And a lot of times, I say this now, I feel like every week, because there have been a lot of these anthology books coming out. But a lot of times, it's like you really like one story, you don't like the other. You're kind of mediocre on 5 of them. But here I felt like all the stories were really well done, and it celebrated the DC Rebirth line really well. So you're going to find a hero you like if you are reading the DC Rebirth line. And it celebrates a lot of holidays. So it's not just Christmas or Hanukkah. They celebrate a lot of different cultures, which I enjoyed. So DC Rebirth Special Issue 1 gets 3.5 stars. If you want a more in-depth review for that, I did do a review on my channel. So go check that out. So now moving on to number 11. Book was also higher than I expected, but did have a little hiccup. And that was Guardians of the Galaxy issue 15. The first arc, or first part of Grounded, which I've been really excited for, to see the Guardians on Earth. I think that's a really cool concept. But here it focuses on Ben, and the opening was really good of, how his city loves him, and how he has his friends, and how he's respected. But also Ben feels alone because he's not part of the Fantastic Four anymore. And then you have a really cool interaction between MJ and the Thing, and because of One More Day, they don't really know each other. But they also say, hey, we kind of know each other, right? Who are you? So that was kind of an interesting interaction. And what I was stating in one of my in-depth reviews about Jessica Jones is that about Brian Michael Bendis' stories this week, it's very connected to all his other series. So this is connected to Iron Man, makes a lot of references to that, and now Infamous Iron Man. So it's very much connected to Iron Man more than Guardians, which I'll talk about. But I like the issue as a Ben issue. Should have it been a Guardians book? No, I think this should have been like an Infamous Iron Man issue. I think they should have taken the time in that book instead of this one to tell Ben's story, because this didn't really have to do with the Guardians. I understand that Ben was part of the Guardians, but it kind of felt a little weird. So, Guardians of the Galaxy issue 15 gets 3.5 stars. It was a good story, but it was kind of weird the way it connected, and I don't know if it was really a Guardians book. Alright, moving on to number 10, which is another Brian Michael Bendis book, and that is Jessica Jones issue 3, which was a very slow burn, which is the reason it's a little lower than expected. But I really liked the character they introduced, which was Allison, which was a random character that showed up in Civil War 2 issue 4. But I remembered her because I remember reading the book and saying, she kind of seems important. I don't know why. They're giving her a lot of backstory for someone that's not important. And at the time, I just thought it was just showcasing Captain Marvel and how mean she is at the time. But we see her, we see Allison again, and she was just this normal civilian back then, and now she's just interrogating Jessica. And what I liked about this is the mystery behind her. You don't really know her motives. You know she doesn't like superheroes. I mean, she was interrogated also by Captain Marvel. And I love that she brings up, hey, your best friend interrogated me. No worries. But I like that, and I'm curious about her motives. But like I said, it's a very slow issue. I kind of wish they revealed it was Allison earlier in the story. I think the first 1/3 of the book with the Danny visions and what's his name, Spot, popping up. I think that could have been totally cut and just started with Allison and given us a little bit more meat. But I like the issue. I still think Jessica Jones has the problem of feeling too nostalgic. It keeps reminding me of the back issues. I'm like, oh wait, I'm in the mind frame of the early 2000s Marvel. But wait, we're in 2016. Never mind. So I kind of wish it made its own identity in some ways, and hopefully it will. So Jessica Jones issue 3 gets 3.5 stars. And moving on to number 9, which is Deathstroke issue 8, which is a little slower of a Deathstroke issue because I love this series, but still a really fun issue where we see Deathstroke versus Superman and how Deathstroke kind of gets away fighting Superman without dying. And then we get little moments of learning a little bit more about Deathstroke's ex-wife, what she's been up to, and how she is teaming up with Superman and Jericho. And then Rose, she has a little part in this issue of learning more about her father and that, she might be lied to. So we'll see what she'll be up to in the upcoming issues. But I love that this has become a family drama, and it's not just about Slade, it's about his family. But it's about Slade. So I liked it. Again, it's a bit slower because it's more of an action issue, but it was still a cool book. So I gave Deathstroke issue 8 3.5 stars. So now moving on to number 8, which is Wonder Woman issue 12. And this is part of the year 1 story arc. I think we're really almost done with the year 1 arc. Next issue is going to be the end. And it's weird because I started out really liking the year 1 story more, and now I'm liking the Truth story more these days. But I like the small details here. You get something between Cheetah and or Barbara and Etta, so maybe there'll be something there. And then it's also more revealed that Wonder Woman had a relationship on Themyscira with one of the Amazons. So I like that they made that a little bit more clear. We'll see if that's affected in a future Wonder Woman arc. And then it builds up to Ares being who Wonder Woman has to go up against. So it's a slow burn. It's Wonder Woman learning more about Earth culture, learning more about Wonder Woman, learning more about Steve and Wonder Woman's relationship. But then it picks up with the cliffhanger with Ares. So yes, it's a slower issue, but it makes me look forward to the future. So Wonder Woman issue 12 gets 3.5 stars. And now it's number 8. Moving on to number 7, which is Silk issue 15. So this book I expected more with, because I thought we were going to get more between Maddie Franklin and Silk, but it definitely, we lean more towards seeing what's going on with Hector, how he's going to maybe be influenced by the Clone Conspiracy arc, because he's a ghost. So is New You going to try to experiment on him? We'll have to see. And we do get somewhat of a, I guess a balance and dynamic between Maddie and Cindy. And in the end, Jay Jonah is very excited to show Cindy his family. And we'll see if Maddie recognizes that Cindy is Silk and how Jay Jonah will react to that. I think Jay Jonah is very blinded from Clone Conspiracy. We saw that a little bit in The Amazing Spider-Man, but I think where it's being more explored in Silk. So there's definitely some interesting story dynamics in this issue. I do think part 1 was a little bit better, and also the art coloring, for some reason, is a little off for me. I don't really like the grays they're using. It just, I don't know. Some of the art's off, but I do think it's better than what we've been getting with Silk. So for me, Silk issue 15 gets 3.5 stars. Now we're moving on to number 6, which is The Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows issue 2. And the first half of this issue, I really liked. I really liked learning more about MJ in this world. I like her being a superhero. It's kind of cool to see that Elseworld story and how she kind of becomes the Peter of the story in so many ways, that she has obligations, but she's got to run away from them. She's like, I'll be back. I like how she balances her secret identity. I think that's really cool because she's always been on the other side of that. Now, the reason this is not on my top 5 is because the last half of Mole Man. And I like that's the story that's connecting all three of these parts, because they're all going to be in different point of views. You had Peter last issue, MJ this issue, and Annie next issue. But Mole Man, just not very interesting of a villain here. It slows down the story. It really, again, picks up in that beginning, but when Mole Man comes up, it made me less interested. So, The Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows issue 2 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 5, which is a book I'm so sad is going to be ending next issue, and that's Power Rangers Pink issue 5, where we actually get to see the arc kind of end here, but we do have, I would say, an epilogue issue next issue, where they defeat their villain. It's Goldar, you know, kind of betrays Kimberly, but kind of doesn't, which is fun. And everyone turns back to normal, even Kimberly's mom, where she's disappointed but not disappointed that Kimberly's mom doesn't remember that Kimberly's a ranger. I hope in the end she tells her. So I love that dynamic throughout the story. I thought that was really cool. But it's also our rangers kind of figuring out, are we still rangers? Are we not? And then it goes into having to help the other rangers. So what will Kimberly do with this power in the last issue? Will there be a surprise, or will it be ending, hey, you know, I moved on? So we'll have to see. I'm very excited for that. Artwork is gorgeous for this book. I love, like I stated in the past, the way they show the mask, how you see Kimberly's expressions through the mask. Obviously, that's something you can't see on the TV show, so I love that they do that in the comic. And then Trini and Zach meet together was a cool shock, and it wasn't a shock that they were together. It was a shock of how Kimberly reacted. It's like, why didn't you tell me? And it just reminds you, you know, these Rangers were best friends too. So I really enjoyed this issue. I gave it 4 stars, and I'm so upset that it's ending next issue. Moving on to number 4, which is Die Kitty Die, issue 3. A book that, if you're not reading, it's so much fun at how it pokes fun at the industry. And the beginning is like a 70s comic. So if you read comics in like the 70s or 80s, it reminds you of that. And it's interesting, though, that then we switch into the modern time, and we see Kitty had friends. She was a superhero back then, and not just a witch. So it kind of pokes fun more at superhero comics than the past books that kind of pokes fun more at Archie comics and like comic strips. So I like that, and we get to see that her friends were in a relationship and how that changed from the 70s to the present. So I thought that was cool. And then they kind of take like a Sabrina approach, where you see Kitty having to go against her evil cousin because she's going to be taking over the book, and you still see that the publisher is trying to kill off Kitty no matter what, and now in the end the cliffhanger is that her husbands or ex-husbands are gonna go kill Kitty, and all these different versions of you know, different type of people being her ex-husbands was a lot of fun. So it's a fun book. It pokes fun at the industry, but you could tell there's a lot of love for the industry at the same time. So Die Kitty Die issue 3 gets 4 stars. Definitely pick that one up. So now moving on to number 3, which is Motorgirl, issue 2. A book that I say pick up now, because it's already getting really interesting. I feel like this is a book that can really pass you by very easily. And I regret having other Terry Moore books pass easily for me, like Rachel Rising and Echo and all, I mean, Strangers in Paradise, which those books I'm now catching up on. But Motorgirl is really interesting because in this issue we learn a little bit more about our main character, where her father was in the military, and I guess that's why she went into the military too, and she never really had a goodbye to her father. So I guess it shows that she's had some childhood trauma. And then we see, you know, she does have PTSD that was mentioned in the first issue, and maybe that is why she's having these illusions, that she's seeing these aliens and her best friend's a monkey, or gorilla, sorry. And we see that relationship, that bond a little bit more between her and her gorilla friend and the person who runs the junkyard. And now these like secret agent guys want the junkyard for some reason. I guess they know about the aliens, and our main character is maybe more open to aliens existing. Because at first, like, no, it was a dream, you know, I'm just going crazy. But at least to her, maybe this is a bit of hope. And there's a lot of mentions of her not wanting to go home and seeing her family. So what I really like about this book is there's two stories. There's the science fiction side that you could take from it, which is aliens, you know, and because it's a comic book, you kind of take it. You just say, yeah, all right, aliens, let's go with this. You kind of take the fantasy story and you're like, this is the world. But maybe this is more of a realistic world than we think. I mean, it shows from the opening quote, which I love that Terry Moore does. You have the opening quote here, which is, all are lunatics, but he who can analyze his delusion is called a philosopher. So it's very much about psychology and our main character's state of mind. So is she seeing these aliens because of her trauma, because of what she's gone through in war? And I guess also another vision of home. Because what are aliens? It's people who are exploring away from home. So maybe she's seeing these aliens because she's always been exploring away from home, but she's fearful to go home. So I think once we learn about these aliens and I guess their idea of home, we'll learn more about our main character. But I love the sprinkle of details here that you can really analyze and again, take the story in different ways. So I'm really enjoying Motorgirl and how much you can analyze from it from a psychological point of view. So Motorgirl issue 2 for me gets 4 stars. Really liking this series and can't wait to see where it goes. Moving on to number 2, really glad to see this so high up, and that was Hawkeye issue 1. I love Kate. If you guys don't know, I'm a huge fan of Kate Bishop since her first appearance in Young Avengers. So it's really cool to see that she's become more of a main part of the Marvel Universe in the last couple of years, since the Matt Fraction run. She's definitely become a bit more popular of a character. And with this issue, she goes to LA, and she's a PI. And, you know, it definitely has a similar vibe to Jessica Jones, and that's the fear of it being a Jessica Jones copy, but at the same time it's not, because Jessica Jones is actually a good detective. She's able to, you know, figure out her cases kind of quickly. At least the easy cases. And with Kate, she's not a good detective at all, and it's proven here. And I love the inner monologue here, where in the end, you know, Kate thinks she's figured out the mystery, and she's helped this girl who's being stalked. She gets kidnapped, and Kate's like, I did such a good job, and the monologue's going through that, and then she gets kidnapped in the end. So Kate's a horrible detective, and I think that's what's fun about this book, is that, you know, she's a great archer, and she has a lot of sass, and I love her sass in this book. Everyone's asking for Clint. It's like, hey, you don't need Clint. You got me. I'm cool. And everyone thinks she's like an eye doctor because she's a horrible artist and she can't draw a sign. I mean, those small moments make this such a fun book, and I can't wait to read more. And the artwork's so good. I mean, the one scene of just even Kate putting on her gear was really fun. Just her getting Hawkeye ready. I loved it. And then even the small details that Kate's able to pick up because she is an archer, because she's been doing this for a while. But then she's a bad detective, so it's just like she's really good physically at like fighting things, but she's not good at like figuring out the pieces. So that's a lot of fun. You get a little bit of the supporting cast here, which was cool, and also a call back to Kate's past. You know, more of the the newer Young Avengers, but you know, Young Avengers, Clint, her father, which still I don't think has been fully fleshed out. Hopefully we get a story between them in this series. But Hawkeye issue 1 was a really solid read, and I can't wait to read more. I really liked the first issue. So Hawkeye issue 1 gets 4 stars, and that was my number 2. Moving on to my number 1, what was my favorite book this week, and that was Batgirl in the Birds of Prey issue 5. I love this issue as a huge Barbara fan. I've grown up as a Barbara fan. I've definitely seen the different sides of Barbara, because she is a character with a lot of different type of stories. They've taken her a lot of different directions over the decades. And she's had a lot of identities. She's had a lot of reboots to her story. If you don't know, Barbara first started out as the niece of Jim Gordon, not the daughter. So she's definitely had some origin changes in her past. But what I love about this story, and I keep saying this about the Birds of Prey news series in general, is how they meld in the New 52, they meld in the pre-New 52, but they're doing something original with it. So with this story, we get the reveal of who this new Oracle is, which is hard. You know, it's a hard story to tell because obviously a lot of people love Oracle. She stands for a lot. This identity stands for a lot. So how do you, and also, I mean, the hype, it's hype of who is this? Is someone we know? What's the mystery? You know, you took 5 months, I guess, to tell the story, maybe a little bit more. So there's a lot of hype around it. But I think the Bensons really succeed on making it about Barbara. Even though it's a reveal of like this guy who was a super Oracle fan, found out all this stuff. It wasn't about him. It was about his love for Barbara. And in a lot of ways, I think it was meta for us as readers, as us as fans of why we care about Barbara Gordon, why do we care about the Birds of Prey, and he's very much this voice in this book. So I really enjoyed this issue. And my favorite page is where Barbara is figuring out, who am I? You know, I have had so many identities. This guy saying I'm Oracle, am I Barbara, am I Batgirl? And she's like, hey, I'm both. I have to read the exact dialogue. She says, am I still Oracle, Barbara Gordon, or Batgirl? I'm all damn three. That's so cool because it really does define Barbara. I feel like a lot of fans, especially of her character, love her for different reasons. And I think this is an issue that showcases if you're a fan of Barbara because she's Batgirl, you can like this issue. If you're a fan because she was Oracle, you can like this issue too. If you just like Barbara, as the daughter of Commissioner Gordon, you'll like this. So I think it's such a beautiful love letter to Barbara Gordon. And I really enjoyed the issue. And I can't wait to see more. Even that scene with Barbara behind the monitors, and I think it was either Black Canary or Huntress saying, all right, Batgirl, what do we do next? She's like, when I'm behind these monitors, you call me Oracle. That was a great scene. My only nitpick of the issue is still the villains. You know, I didn't really care about what they were talking about towards the villains and the money they were stealing or whatever that Oracle was trying to fight against. But it gets interesting in the end where Huntress's mother is involved. So I really like this issue a lot. It was my pick of the week. So Batgirl Birds of Prey issue 5 gets 4.5 stars. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Note. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, description below, there are links for my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. And let me know in the comments below, what was your worst pick of the week, what was your best pick of the week, and everything in between. This is Comic Note, Comic Frontline, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.